Okay, we're going to go ahead and graph this sine curve. But before I begin, I'm going to analyze the equation a little bit. So first of all, I notice the negative sign. So something's going to happen because of the negative sign. I see that my amplitude is 3. I notice that I have a b, which is 2. That's going to change my period. And then I also notice that I have a plus pi over 2, which is my phase shifting. Now, we talked about that if b is inside the parentheses, that's going to cause a problem with the phase shifting. So before we start to graph, we need to fix the b so that it's outside the parentheses. So to do that, we are going to factor. So this is what we've got, 2x plus pi over 2. We are going to factor out the 2. So if I do that, that's the same thing as taking pi over 2 and dividing it by 2. Well, dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by a half, so that's going to turn out to be pi over 4. All right, so my new equation is going to look like this. Y equals a negative 3 sine 2 outside the parentheses x plus pi over 4. All right, the pi over 4 is a phase shift. It's telling me I'm going left pi over 4. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that dotted line on my graph paper. This is going left pi over 4. And my midline would be what's ever added on the end here. This is your midline. And so that's a 0 right there. So we're going to go ahead and keep the midline right there on the x-axis. So we're going to go ahead and draw that in. So I know the sine curve always starts on the midline. So I know my first point's right there. It's kind of like my new origin, my new 0, 0. Okay, so a sine curve, we got to figure out what the period is. Now remember, we had a b right here. So this b changes our period. Normally the sine curve period is 2 pi. By the time you get to 2 pi, you have one sine curve. Well, because we have a 2, that means the frequency is 2. That means so by the time we get to 2 pi, we need to have 2 sine curves. So if we're going to figure out the period, we're just going to use this little formula. Period is always 2 pi divided by absolute value of b. So I usually just say 2 pi divided by b. So 2 pi divided by 2 is pi. So by the time you get to pi, you should have one sine curve. That's pi spacing, not pi on your graph. So on our graph paper, pi is 4 grid marks. So by the time 1, 2, 3, 4 grid marks right here, I should get one sine curve. Now, if I want to know how far apart those key points are, remember the sine curve starts at the origin, it goes up, that's one part, comes back down, that's 2 parts, then it goes down below, that's 3, and then back up is 4 parts. So if I take my pi over 4, or pi divided by 4, gives me pi over 4. Every pi over 4, I'm going to put one of those key points. And because our amplitude is 3, we know we're going to go up 3 from the midline and down 3 from the midline. And then the last thing we need to figure out, the negative sign, remember, is going to reflect. So instead of the sine curve going up, it's going to go down. So my first point, I'm going to start here at 0, 0 right here. Then I'm going to go down 3 because of my amplitude over pi over 4. Then I'm going to come back to the midline as an intercept. I'm going to go up as a max, and then I'm going to come back down as an intercept. That's one sine curve. All right, and then we just keep following that pattern. And you can see by the time we get to 2 pi spacing, we did end up with 2 sine curves. And we can follow it in the other direction. Just keep following that pattern. And now we have 3 cycles of our sine curve drawn. And we could just keep going. So remember, try to make them look a little curved. Mine looks a little bit off here, but it does have a little bit of a curve. Okay, that's how you graph number 22.